Hello, my name is Brenda. I have not made a video since like October, mainly because between my kids, a million animals, I usually cannot find a time or a place in the house that is quiet enough to make one. But I've decided that I was just going to go ahead and make it anyway because I was fortunate enough recently to spend the night at the Myrtle Plantation, which is in St. Francisville, Louisiana, and wow, it was an amazing experience. So, if we get interrupted with teenagers screaming at their Xbox or like animals run by the screen, like I've just decided I don't care. It's just it's just going to have to be the way that it is. So when I sat down to make this, I was trying to think like, do I want to go through the whole history of the plantation? There's a lot. I mean, it's obviously very old. It was built in 1794. And then I decided, no, I'm really not going to do that because there are literally thousands of videos on the plantation and the history of it. And I just figured like if you really wanted to get into all of that, like there are literally thousands of videos on the historical part of it. And so for time sake, there's other things I really wanted to look at, which is looking at kind of how some of the stories came about, or are are the stories of why the plantation has become known as one of the most haunted places in America. Do the stories match up to the records? Is there proof that these stories occurred? Because really, they're so popular and so well known. I mean, even when you go there, they have the little tour guides that will take you on the tour of the house, and they like literally tell you all of these stories that are kind of what's out there in most of the videos presented as fact, except when you really look at it, what's actually in the records and written down doesn't match that. And yet those stories endure. So are they urban legends? Are they stories based in fact that never were written down because maybe people didn't want them written down or didn't want there to be proof of these events happening? I don't know. I don't know. But we're going to look at it. We're going to look at it and you can, I guess, decide for yourself. I still don't have an opinion one way or the other. I have an opinion that it's haunted. Yes, yes. Um, but I'm not 1,000% sure on who, why, whatever. So like I said, the plantation was built in 1794 by a man by the name of David Bradford. I'm sorry, I'm really distracted by my cat that's like keeps like kind of, yeah, say hi. Hi. His name is Jet. My 5-year-old changed his name to Paco, so I don't know. His name is either Jet or Paco. But in 1794, the plantation was built by David Bradford. He was from Philadelphia, and he pretty much fled Philadelphia during the Whiskey Rebellion. He actually had like a mark on his head, like he was a wanted man. So he took off and he came down, and for some reason he was like totally accepted when he got to Louisiana. And actually where the plantation is at that time was actually a part of Florida. I did not know that. I had no idea of that until I went and spent time at the plantation very recently, a couple of weeks ago. So he was like really welcomed down there. I don't know. And he ended up with this piece of property. He built this house, and then he eventually, when things kind of blew over, he went and he got his wife and his children, and he brought them, and they stayed at the plantation. They lived there. Obviously, over the years, the plantation changed hands many times. Was there tragedy at this plantation? Absolutely. No doubt about it. It's in the records. It is written. We know that there are for certain some deaths that occurred there, and tragic deaths, no less. So At one point, we have a 3-year-old who dies from typhoid, typhoid fever. I think I'm saying that right. I don't know. She dies. Okay, so we have her. A gentleman who owned the house at one point by the name, it's my another cat. I'm like literally, this is Mama Cat. Her real name is Baby Cat, but she had kittens, so now she's Baby Cat. Now she's Mama Cat. I totally just said that wrong. And now there's like cat hair flying around me. I'm actually the crazy cat lady. So William Winters buys the house and he ends up getting shot to death on the front porch of the house. Keep him in mind. We're going to talk about him again in a minute. But for now, let's just put him up there as a documented second death. Then there is a brother to this woman, Sarah, who will become a very important figure as we move along. Her brother dies in a robbery, not in the main house, but on the property in a little house that he was living in. 3 that we know. Sarah ends up dying of yellow fever when we get to her story. And a year after that, her 2 children die, also of yellow fever. So that is 6 that we know of, no matter what, that is historically written down as untimely deaths. Okay, and then who knows how many like people died of natural causes or old age or whatever, but like that's 6 untimely deaths. Now, some of these are never really touched upon. Nobody really talks about it. Like the guy that like was robbed and killed in the house on the property for some odd reason, like I never read or hear about him, and yet he's actually in the historical records. The little girl who like dies of typhoid fever at like 3, I didn't really hear much about her until I was at the plantation, but she's documented, like we know she actually died there. So let's move on to Mr. Winter, the man who gets shot on the front porch. In the official records, in the historical records of the house, the story goes that he was like doing Sunday school or something, like teaching, I don't know if it was like a Bible class or Sunday school in what is called the game room in the house. And he is summoned to the front porch because a gentleman is out there on a horse, and he's like, hey, does anybody know of a lawyer? Can I find a lawyer here? I need a lawyer. And he goes out there, he's like, yes, like I'm a lawyer, and he gets shot right there. And nobody's ever prosecuted for it. It remains unsolved. Nobody knows why he was shot. All they assume is like maybe a bad business deal, whatever. When you read about the plantation, the popular version of it and the version told by the tour guides when you go through the house is that Mr. Winters is in the game room. That part remains the same, only he wasn't doing like a Sunday school. He was just like having a meeting or something, I guess with some other local men, business stuff. And same story. He's summoned to the front porch and he's shot. Only in that version, look, I'm like falling apart. In that version, he stumbles like bloodied and dying into the house, up the stairway. When we first walk in, there's like a pretty big stairway when you first walk in the front door. And I guess he's like stumbling up the stairs to the 17th step. Sarah hears all of this like banging around. Sarah being his wife, she runs out and he like dies in her arms, and it's like sad. And then all of a sudden the legend begins that, oh, and people hear, banging up the stairs, and if you listen, it stops on the 17th step, and sometimes you can hear Sarah wailing on the stairs and reliving this moment over and over and over and over. That's the version told on the tour. That's the version that you often read about. Again, I don't know. I mean, I certainly wasn't there, but it doesn't match the historical records. I don't know. Either way, what we do know is the man died. So whether he died on the front porch or he died, that was my cat sneezing. or whether he died on the 17th step in the house. I guess it's not that big of a difference. One is just more dramatic, I guess. The biggest and most important story to the whole plantation is Mr. Woodruff and his wife, Sarah. They had the house, they had children. Now, in the historical records, Sarah sadly dies of yellow fever, and a year later, two of her children die, a son and a daughter, of also of yellow fever, and they're pretty young. I think they're like, I want to say 11 and 12, or like somewhere in that age group. That is the historical records of how they die. Legend is much darker. So it's said that Mr. Woodruff had, well, him and his wife had slaves, and they were in the cotton industry at the time. And there was, in particular, a slave girl by the name of Chloe, who was supposedly very young and very beautiful. And there's different versions, but they say that Clark, Mr. Woodruff, takes Chloe as his lover. Now, there's two versions. There's one that this is an affair, so that would be like mutual. They wanted to be together. And then in a more well-known version is that he just takes Chloe. Like that's that. Like you're going to be my lover. And even with that, the story splits off into two popular different versions. So one version is that Sarah, the wife, learns of the affair and has Chloe's ear cut off as punishment for being with her husband. In an equally, if not more well-known version, is that Mr. Woodruff has her ear cut off. And this is actually the version that's told in the house on the tour. And so, okay, so in this version, same thing. They're intimate, however that comes to be. And apparently Chloe had a thing for eavesdropping. She would often listen when Mr. Woodruff would have important business meetings. Now, the way the house is set up, there's a ladies' parlor and there's a gentleman's parlor. And in the ladies' parlor, if the ladies were hanging out, sewing, gossiping, whatever, they would do that in the ladies' parlor. And then there's a gentleman or a man's parlor where they would conduct business, man things. And these two parlors are connected by two sliding doors, heavy sliding doors, not like a little accordion door. These are big, wooden doors. And so supposedly she was listening in. I guess the ladies' parlor was empty. There was no ladies there at the time. So she's listening in. And for some reason, somebody, I don't know if they hear her or what, makes them open the door. But one of the men swings open the door. Chloe tumbles into the gentleman's parlor. Mr. Woodruff is horrified. He's embarrassed. He's just like so angry because here his like young slave girl is embarrassing him. She's listening to man business. I mean, his own wife wouldn't be allowed to listen to, the men folk talk business. So he orders her ear to be cut off, which I guess that would probably make more sense to the story as why it would be the ear, because she was eavesdropping. And then apparently she starts wearing like a turban around her neck. In those days, even though obviously being a slave would be horrendous under any circumstances, to be put out in the fields would be even worse. Louisiana is like horrendously hot and, just like humid and gross. No offense if you live in Louisiana. I live in Florida. I get it. It's gross here too, at least, most of the year. It's super, super duper hot. So to work out there, like physical labor, would be way worse than being in the house. So she concocts a plan. That's one version, okay? She concocts a plan that she is going to make the children, or I guess the whole family, the wife, the husband, and the two children sick so that she can nurse them all back to health. She would be the hero. They'd be so grateful. They would never at that point put her out in the field, and all would be forgiven for the eavesdropping. In the other version, she does it maliciously and for revenge. In the tour, it's the version of she wants to make them all sick so she can make them all better, and then everybody will be happy and she will stay in the house and not outside in the fields. So she decides in the story, she decides that she's going to make a birthday cake, and she's going to put white oleander flowers in it, which apparently is poisonous. But she's like 17 years old. She doesn't really know how much to use. She's just heard before that it can make you sick. And it ends up that Mr. Woodruff, even though it's one of the children's birthdays, he ends up not being home. So they have the little dining room set up for this little birthday dinner thing, get together. So mom is there and the children are there, but dad is not there, as it turns out. So she feeds them this birthday cake that now has these poisonous flowers in it, and she doesn't know how much to use. So what do you think happens? They die. Mom and two children dead. Well, according to the story, now again, so you either have revenge, and in that case she would, I guess, mean for them to die, or maybe she just wanted to make them really sick. But in the more popular version, and the version that is told in the tour of the house, is she accidentally kills them. Her plan just goes haywire. Well, Mr. Woodruff is called back home. He's devastated. His wife and his children are dead. And the other slaves in the house decide that they are going to rat her out because they are so scared that somehow this is going to fall onto them. Like Mr. Woodruff is going to somehow believe like they were in on it, and God only knows what's going to happen. So they decide, listen, sister, you did this. Like, we had nothing to do with it. We're not taking the fall for this. They go and they tell him what she has done. And he decides that, that's it. Like, she needs to go. She needs to be killed. And so she is. And then there's a whole bunch of different versions of how or where she dies. I've heard that she was hung on the property. I've heard that she was thrown into the Mississippi River. I don't know. I don't even know if the story's true. But later, years down the road, this picture ends up popping up. And this picture seems to reflect what would appear to be a Black woman on the property who many identify as Chloe. And it has been said that she has haunted the property ever since, along with Sarah and the children, and that visitors to the house often hear children playing, children laughing. They hear footsteps, noises, disembodied, whispers, cries, whatever. It's also been said that things move around constantly, which we're going to talk about in a second. If the story is true, I guess maybe it just never made it to public records, because who would want a story like that in their, in the records of their town? It certainly would be a blemish all the way around, especially if Mr. Woodruff was taking this young girl against her will, sexually. So, and even worse still, at that time, if a slave girl had killed, the wife of this prominent man and his children, maybe it was just something that they just didn't want in the records. Wouldn't be the first or last time that, information just doesn't make it onto records. So what's interesting, though, is that this story has endured for so very long. So for there to be nothing to it, I don't know. That it does seem like it would have faded away. And even though there's different versions of it, kind of has a solid baseline and it just kind of like curves with the details, but the actual story itself seems to endure. I don't know. But either way, so we know that there's been death there. We know that there's been untimely death there. There's tragedy, the whole recipe for a haunting, right? So now my personal experience. So I get there. It's a beautiful property. It is, I got there in the daylight. It's absolutely beautiful. We had stayed in the garden house, which is a relatively newer set of little buildings that, and all the pictures will be here, but a relatively new set of buildings that have been constructed because so many people apparently visit and want to stay. It's a bed and breakfast now. A little bit pricey, but it's worth it. You get a historical daytime tour included. There's a night tour that you can pay extra for, like $15 a person. Even though we got the day tour included in the price of our room, we did choose to do the nighttime one just because I felt like it would be a little bit more spooky. I felt like the setting at night would just, feel a little bit more haunting-ish. So not a word. And then you get a breakfast in the morning, which is like amazing. It's like sausages and like eggs and grits and all this like real southern breakfast, and everybody was super nice. The staff is amazing. They're very, very friendly, at least in my opinion, in my experience. They were very friendly. So we get there, we check in, we put our stuff in the room. It's me and my husband who literally cannot stand anything haunted, but I've like dragged him into this. So we get there, we settle in, we decide that we're going to go get something to eat real quick. They have a beautiful restaurant on site, but we didn't know you had to make reservations for it, and then it was booked. So we ended up just like going somewhere in town and eating, and then we came back. We did our tour at 8 o'clock. The tour guide was very, very personable. She was like really into it. Whether or not the information is accurate or historically accurate, who knows? But like she did a fabulous job. We got to tour the whole house. If you watch a bunch of videos, you'll see that there's like this mirror in the entryway, I guess you would call it. And legend has it that no matter how many, and this is an original mirror, like this has been there. So no matter how many times it's been sent out to be cleaned and maintained, there's still like fingerprints, handprints and like a little kid's footprint that shows up. Now I'm just going to say this. Did I see the things that they pointed out? Yes. Did it kind of look like a little kid's footprint, which would be like super weird, like up on a mirror? Yes. But like, I wasn't like, oh my God. I was just like, maybe. I was just like so busy taking pictures. I figured like I'll take a bazillion pictures and then like I'll look at them later. And that's what I did. We went through all the rooms. Oh my gosh, it was just like so interesting to see. There was so much original furniture and different things to this house. And when you think about how far back this plantation goes, it was just amazing to see all this old furniture and stuff. So I loved that, even if it was like nothing haunted, like whatsoever. So I'm going to include some of the pictures. Now, I met two girls there who were actually from Louisiana. They had a wild experience. So, and I have one of their pictures here too, which is like actually super creepy. But so when you're going to stay in your room, they ask you not to put cups and things down on the furniture because the furniture is like, 250 years old. So they had used like magazines on their end tables because like they figured like I'm not getting up in the middle of the night to, go get a drink or whatever because like I'm in the most haunted place in America. So like I'm not. So they each had a cup and they kept them on these like magazines so that they wouldn't touch the furniture. When they woke up in the morning, kid you not, both cups were no longer beside the bed. They were across the room on, like fireplace mantle-y thing, like sitting side by side together. Like, I kid you not. And apparently this is a thing, like stuff moves around all the time. So that happened. But for me personally, so my husband decides that I'm not even joking. My husband decides after the tour that he's going to watch Netflix and like sit in the room. You're in the Myrtle Plantation, one of the most, historical, most haunted houses in America, and you want to sit in your room and watch Netflix. Okay, I'm not. So I decided, okay, then I'll just like go by myself and like wander around, right? So I figured I'd meet somebody like event. I'm like literally like undressing as I'm speaking over here. So I'm wandering around completely by myself. So there's like this walkway and it's all like pebbly, like really, there's like really fine little tiny pebbles. And I'm like the only person walking down this walkway. I see some people like in the distance, like these two people with this like super big camera that, I kid you not, it was like from the ground up to here on this big tripod. They're like super serious about their pictures. I have like, my cell phone going, but they have like all this equipment. Well, they're like way over there. No possible way I could hear them or they could hear me. Like they're full on making like this little home video or whatever they're doing. I can't hear anything that they're doing. I'm completely alone on this walkway. I'm walking because I figure I'm going to walk over to the main house. I had met some people on the tour. So I'm thinking like, okay, my husband is like literally, Netflixing and chilling by himself. So I'll just like go over there and find somebody to hang out with. So as I'm walking to the main house from the garden house where we were staying, I hear in my right ear, like right here, I hear somebody go, "Hey." I know 1,000% that nobody's going to be there when I turn around because like I know I'm here by myself, but you still do that like weird. Of course, there's nobody there. Like I already knew there was not going to be anybody there. Now I have like the chills, like I'm freaking out. Don't ask me why. I turn and I start to like haul butt back to my room. I can hear somebody walking behind me. Like I can hear the pebbles. I literally can hear footsteps behind me. I look again. I know there's not going to be anybody there, but like for some odd reason, I have to look. I look. Nobody there. I get back to my room. I like bust through the door. I'm literally crying now, actual real tears. And I'm like, we gotta go. This place is like super haunted. It's too much. I wanna go. My husband's like staring at me like dead in the eye. He's like, no, we drove 12 hours because you wanted to find a ghost. So like, we're not leaving. Go find your ghost. Okay. I mean, he's not wrong, but, and everyone's like, well, why would you freak out? Like you literally went there to find a ghost. True. But yet, like, well, one, when it happens, you're still like, oh my God. But two, I think because in my mind, once I got like to the point of like actually like ghost hunting, like I'm in the middle of the night, I'm like, is anybody here that wants to talk to us? And you're doing all that like weird stuff. Maybe if something happened, I'd be like, oh, okay, like this is happening. I think it was so early in the night, so unexpected. I wasn't like even looking for a ghost at that point. Like I was literally just walking over to the main house. I think it just caught me so off guard that like I got like super shook up. But at any rate, so I go back outside. I go back over. Now, when I go to places like this, I like to do a lot of recordings and try to get EVPs. I kid you not, I couldn't take any video. And when I tell you the reason, you're going to be like, what? There were so many ducks. Please, if you've ever been to the Myrtle Plantation, please comment and tell me if this was your experience because like this was like crazy. There was so many ducks on this property that were so freaking loud. They were like, wah, wah, wah. And they were like this big. Like they weren't like ducks. Like wah. they were like this big, and they would like follow you. They would like come like right up to you. I guess maybe because people feed them or something. I don't know, but they would like not like aggressive, like mean, but just like super like wah, 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 like just coming up to you, and it was so loud, and there was so many of them. There's no way in the world I could have videoed anything because you wouldn't have heard anything except ducks. I might even have a video, like maybe I might, like maybe one that I like attempted to do, but I guarantee you, if I can find it and I play it just for the fun of it, you're just gonna hear ducks. But so then we finally, not we, I get to the main house, and I met some people from, they were from Tennessee, talked to them for a little bit. They looked at me like I was a little bit insane because they were literally just there for the ambiance of the beauty of the plantation, the history of it. And when I started talking about how somebody just said hey to me on the walkway, I kid you not, they looked at me like I was on drugs, and they just kind of excused themselves and left. Not even joking. So then I find the girls, the women and girls, like a bunch of 11-year-olds, that had been on the tour that I had been friendly with. And okay, okay, I didn't just find them. I sat in front of their room like an actual stalker and waited for them to come out. And they like came out. They're like, "Oh, hey, like, what are you doing?" I was like, "Sitting on the porch in front of your room, waiting for you, hoping you would come outside." You did. Hi, friend. So then we start walking around, and oddly, for as many people as were staying there that night, I mean, not like a huge amount of people, there's only so many rooms, but there wasn't many people like walking around the property. Like you would think that that's what people would be doing, right? Like ghost hunting. I don't know. Like that's what I would think everybody was there for, but apparently that's not. The only reason people go there, because there really wasn't hardly anybody outside except for us. So we're sitting on the porch, and it's like super quiet. At this point, it's like maybe like 1:30 in the morning. I feel like I lost a whole period of time there because I feel like I came out of my room at like 10, so I don't know how it's like 1 now, but like I'm pretty sure that it was around like 1:30 at this point. We're sitting outside where the famous Chloe picture is that you always hear about. Is like the alleyway in the pictures looks like this big like long alley. When you're there, it's literally like it's not that wide and it's not that long. So we start hearing whistling, and we're like, okay, like is somebody over there? Is like somebody messing with us? You know. So we walk over there, and we actually walked all the way to the back just to make sure there was like nobody behind the building. There's like not a soul around. And as we're now like in the alley, we're like physically standing in the alley now. We can still hear the whistling, only it's very clear that it's like in our vicinity now. It's not like something coming from far away. It's like here. And we're all just like creepishly like just staring at each other. Like, oh my God, like you hear that. And it was like repetitive. It wasn't like once or twice. And it was, I can't whistle, but it was like a whistle. Then we hear this weird sound that I can only describe as like if you were calling a cat or even a dog. Like, you know how if you're calling an animal, you're kind of like, now my cat's like staring at me. See, that's what it sounds like. It sounds like you're calling a cat, right? So this is another cat. Oh, I saw we. Her name is Cat because we're super original. So I know if by now you're not like, oh my God, she's a crazy cat lady. And that's like only half of them. So we hear the sound. As I was literally just saying, like, doesn't that sound like the way you would call an animal? This cat, like an actual real life cat, is laying on the front porch, gets up and comes over as though he's responding to the sound. So we're not crazy. That's what it sounded like. And the cat responded to it, only we didn't call him. And it came to our area because that's where the sound was coming from. And that was just completely freaky. So after all of this happened, we decided to call it a night. Now it was getting like really super late. Um, when I went, or that night, while I was out like running around, my husband, who again, like does not do the haunted thing, doesn't like it, doesn't, has no interest in it. He's in the room, and as he's laying there, he hears like a bang, and then like another sound, which he described as almost like if a cardboard box full of things, maybe like in a closet, like full of things, like fell over and the stuff tumbled out. So he like looks, because he's like, oh, what is that? I mean, we only had a suitcase with us and it was on the floor. And he realizes like there's nothing there, nothing has fallen, nothing in the room is amiss, everything is exactly as it should be. We didn't have much there when we were there for a night. But in the room, he heard this like something like as if it fell, and then stuff like tumbled out of it. And there was nothing, 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 nothing. So I come back to the room, I go to sleep. The next day, I really had a chance to look at all of our pictures. And the funny thing is, I was taking pictures of the stairway because, the 17th stair, we keep hearing like that all of this, ghostly images are caught on the stairwell, or people hear things on the stairwell. So I was taking pictures of the famous stairwell. And it was only when I looked back on the pictures that I noticed in the background, in that window, that there was an image in the window. And I enlarged it, I'm looking at it, I'm like, well, it looks like a person, or, like a younger person. Now, I did go back to that window to confirm that there was no curtain, there was no shade, there was nothing else on it. It was just glass. Showed it to one of the people that worked there, and I'm like, is there any way that there was anything, on this glass? Compared the pictures with other people from that night who also had pictures of the stairway. Whatever this image is, apparently is only shown up on my picture. You'll also see the other image that is, I guess it's unexplainable. So when I snapped this picture, I took one and then realized my flash wasn't on, and then took another one immediately right after. So whatever is there, I don't know. I mean, I guess it should have been in both. That one, I'm not 100% sure that there's not an explanation for that one. But the one by the stairwell, I can't think of any other explanation for that one. I really can't. I know what I heard. I know that I heard a disembodied voice speak to me on that walkway. Nobody's going to tell me, oh, well, maybe it was someone from far. It was right here. It was right here in my ear. It wasn't from far away. It was right here. I know what I heard. I mean, it literally like sent me running back to my room. I was very shooken up, even though I was there to find ghosts. Go figure. So I'm going to include the pictures, from that night. You be the judge. You obviously can't judge whether or not I did hear a disembodied voice or not. The famous Chloe picture, I'll go ahead and put that in there. Whether or not that's Chloe, she has shown up over the years in tons of pictures. You can go right on Google and find all kinds of ghost images for the plantation. If there was a girl named Chloe, no one's ever really going to know. Whether or not it's an urban legend, whether it was true and just kept out of public records, we know that the plantation had a lot of death. We know children died there, and that's stories that have endured of children, being heard laughing, being mischievous, moving things around. I don't know. I guess it doesn't really matter if those specific stories, or some specific stories, have been changed, or even some of them made up, because what we do seem to know is there's something strange going on at the plantation and has been for many, 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 many of years. You know, too many people have visited and had strange phenomena happen to them, both personally, in photographs, on recordings. Apparently, other people got recordings. I don't know. Maybe the ducks weren't out and about. You tell me what you think. Let me know if you've ever been to the plantation. If you haven't been, either way, whether it's for ghosts or just for a little getaway, I highly suggest going. The staff was amazing. Um, the tour was really cool. The breakfast was delicious. Um, it was it was a really cool experience. I'm super glad that I got to go. It was actually on my bucket list. So the fact that I went at all is just like, it's super exciting. So thanks for watching. I'll include, whatever pictures I have, maybe even the ones that I didn't find anything in, and maybe, you guys will pick up on something that I didn't see or I didn't notice. And then you can let me know. Okay? So thanks for watching, and I'll see you soon. Bye.